Fallouts are a mainstay in the world of Real Housewives. We see it happen on every franchise. Two women are besties, sharing an unbreakable bond until the unthinkable happens and they're torn apart, dividing the group and breaking our hearts. Some of these fallouts hurt worse than others and dredge up feelings of our own failed friendships, so in this new series, Nuclear Fallout, I'm going to examine these broken bonds, look at what went wrong and why they affect us so severely. Today we're going to focus on Carole Radziwill versus Bethenny Frankel from the Real Housewives of New York, but let me know who else you want to see me examine in the future. So let's start with a brief overview of the beginning, the time the two shared with us before they knew each other. This is going to be a major skimming, but let's just set up where they were before they found each other. So Bethenny was an OG and the breakout star of the Real Housewives of New York. She was the striver, not being married or having children, and was the quote-unquote poor one, as we saw her hustling to build up her businesses.
Have you tried anything? Would you like to? No, great. Excellent. It's going really well. I can hear a muffin drop in here.
First Bethenny bakes, then the much more successful Skinny Girl. She was said to be the Greek chorus of the show, providing hilarious reactions in her confessionals.
Gummy bears don't come from the vine. Those aren't the bears that you see in the Bronx Zoo.
She bonded most with Jill Zarin early on, but after Bethenny started her meteoric rise to big-time success, the two had a falling out of their own. If you guys want to see a video on the two of them, let me know. She had a decent enough connection with Alex McCord, but was not besties forever close with any of the ladies really, and exited the show after season 3 when she got multiple spin-off reality shows and a talk show. Those didn't really catch on, but what did was her Skinny Girl brand, which turned her into one of the wealthiest housewives of all time. Let's put a pin in Bethenny for now. We were left adrift for a year until season 5 brought us our second major player, Carole Radziwill. So Carole was a former journalist working for ABC News, picking up a handful of Emmys during her tenure. She was also married to Lee Radziwill's son, Anthony, making her a princess, rubbing elbows with high society folks, notably Anthony's cousin JFK Jr. and his wife Carolyn Bessette. She was most notable for her memoir, What Remains, which she had published in the wake of the devastating loss of her husband and her two best friends in the span of just weeks, which was a major success. She had a lot of clout going into the show, and the women, especially fellow rookie Aviva, who you can hear more about in my Rookies Part 2 video, seemed very excited to be in her presence. And what a presence she had. She was a certified cool girl with a casual relationship with a rock star. She was much more laid back than any other housewife we'd seen on RHONY and seemed to be a bit more of a curious observer rather than a participant in the drama of the show. She really shined in her confessionals and seemed to treat the whole experience as just another adventure. She formed a very close bond with the third season 5 rookie, Heather Thompson, and we saw that friendship grow into full-on bestiehood as they went into their sophomore season. Season 6 also marked her further descent into the drama, having a major feud with Aviva over whether Carole Ghost wrote the book that made her a literary star.
Harry, it's so nice to meet you. I totally understand the divorce.
So this brings us to Season 7 and Chapter 2 in our saga, The Courtship. Season 7 marked the return of Bethenny, and she was totally transformed. When we last saw her, she was pregnant, engaged, and starting to see some skinny girl success, but with the passing of time, she was now a mother, going through an incredibly acrimonious divorce, and a full-on mega-millionaire mogul. Bethenny's life is in a state of flux, and she seems kind of frenzied and chaotic. She meets the women who have joined since she exited in the Hamptons, and there seems to be a magnetic pull between her and Carole. They're both a little reserved with each other, but clearly want to be friends. Maybe it's just because I was watching focusing specifically on the connection between the two of them, but there seemed to be like a soulmate sensing connection. Like when you meet someone and just have a sixth sense that they will be important in your life. Carole is a bit thrown off when Bethenny and Ramona start going at it over warring brunch plans and thinks Bethenny is a little crazy, but I think Carole likes a little crazy. Bethenny throws a brunch and ensures the Bloody Marys are to Carole's liking.
This will be the Bloody Marys. What's her name? Carole said she likes horseradish in hers.
Notably not taking anyone else's preferences into account. She's really not into Carole's current bestie, Heather, and the two clash throughout the season. Heather is an advice giver, and Bethenny really doesn't like this. B feels she asks way too many personal questions and kind of moms her. Both are also businesswomen, and we see this sometimes go well, such as when they both attempt to help Sonja with her international lifestyle brand, and both agree it's a hot mess, but mostly they are just not into each other. It's kind of funny that Bethenny's gripe is that Heather gets too personal with her when she really opens up to Carole, who's not that great with that kind of stuff, crying to her in the middle of a home decor store.
Let's just establish that it would be totally awkward if we hugged.
No, but one day maybe we'll hug.
Maybe in the future, but
The big storyline with Bethenny is that a lot of the women feel she's not that committed to the group, but she seems to make a lot of time for Carole. She has a lot of double standards for Radzi, such as not minding when Carole stirs up issues between Kristen and Bethenny, straight up telling Kristen that B called her dumb.
I might have said something like, she might think you're not that smart either.
Excellent.
Bethenny seems a bit more into Carole, but Carole likes her as well. She just has more options as she's still close with Heather and the other girls. Although she has recently started dating her younger hottie chef boyfriend Adam, which has driven a wedge between her and Luann, as he used to date Luann's niece.
He's young.
How old is he?
He's very young. You know, it's Sonja young. It's, you know.
It's what?
After their trip to the Turks and Caicos, when Heather and Carole busted into Luann's room to confront her about inviting a random man into the home,
So be cool. Don't be all, like, uncool.
the relationship between the two really dissolves. We find out at the reunion that Bethenny and Carole had spent part of the summer gallivanting around the Galapagos Islands and have gotten really close. So this takes us up to Chapter 3, Besties for Life. Season 8 marks a bit of a change. Carole has lost Heather and Kristen, so she's all in with Bethenny. She's also in a phase of nesting, getting more serious with Adam, and beginning her menagerie of pets all named Baby. They multiply and multiply as the seasons progress. She's firmly fallen out with Luann, and they're full-on feuding, putting Bethenny a little in the middle, but she's Team Carole if she had to choose. Bethenny is still chugging along with Skinny Girl. She's a little frustrated that she can't always get in touch with Carole, but they're officially besties and ride everywhere together and spend a lot of time lounging around each other's apartments. Another change in the series is the entrance of Jules. Jules triggers something deep in Bethenny as she's very underweight, and that evokes images of Bee's own mother who has struggled with anorexia. Bethenny has her guard up and takes Carole along on the ride. They don't really give her a chance and are weirded out at everything she does. Bethenny is also feuding with Dorinda's boyfriend John, and by extension Dorinda, and when Bee hosts a tailgate birthday party in the Hamptons, their mean girl era is officially upon us as they ostracize both Luann and John. This is made worse when Jewel has a brunch at her house in the Hamptons. Bethenny and Carole make fun of how far away it is and the construction it's undergoing, fixating on Jules' issues with food before fleeing the scene. They really harp on Jules all season and call more attention to Jules' eating disorder than I personally think is appropriate. Jules is open about her struggle with anorexia, but I think it's the kind of thing where it should be Jules' story to tell and nobody else's. I do see that it's a personal trigger for Bethenny and get why she's not that into Jules, but I feel like they were a bit harder on her than was necessary and it didn't reflect well upon them. So anyway, since Carole is feuding with Luann, Bethenny decides to do the same, at first attributing it to feeling like she was trying to weasel into her plans to hang out with the Beverly Hills girls, before it morphs into a general hatred and slut-shaming when the ladies head to Dorinda's home in the Berkshires.
You are a hypocrite.
What?
You everyone.
Oh,
And you
really?
pretend that you don't. I don't care if you're the biggest whore in Macy's window.
Luann has just started dating Tom, who has also dated Sonja and Ramona, and Bethenny very much uses this against her. She's also a bit triggered that Luann said she helped invent the Skinny Girl margarita, which I guess is a somewhat fresh sore as this is when Sonja's making her Tipsy Girl wine.
People who want to be skinny, drink Skinny Girl. I'm doing fat, tipsy bitches. I mean, I'm not doing skinny bitches.
So maybe Bethenny is randomly feeling insecure about her business, like she's having imposter syndrome or something. I don't really know why she would be, but that's the best catalyst I could come up with. It could also be in defense of Carole, who's upset with Luann for calling her some pretty horrific names.
No, she got really upset about the pedophile one. Sorry I ever called you
Stuck on the pedophile one?
Either way, Carole and Bethenny are a firmly united front against Luann, so much so that when Bethenny proposes a trip to Mexico and Carole says she won't go if Lou goes, Bethenny says she won't go if Carole doesn't go.
She's throwing a trip, and now if Carole doesn't go, then she's not going. Well, then I'm not going. Then none of us are going.
At this point, they're filming nearly all their scenes together, with Bethenny even joking that Carole is her wife when they go to the doctor together. Bethenny has a Skinny Girl chocolate launch and only invites Carole, talking about how since she doesn't really have family, Carole is the one she wants to see her accomplishments and be proud of her. They really work because Bethenny thrives in the spotlight and Carole seems to be cool with being the support cheering her on. I think it's kind of just Carole's nature, especially when you consider being best friends with Carolyn Bessette Kennedy. I wonder if her husband shared that dynamic with his cousin JFK Jr. as well. That's not to say that Carole doesn't have a personality of her own or is a follower. Rather that she's comfortable enough with herself to not need to be as famous or as focused upon as her best friend. She does make efforts to fight the notion that they're a package deal and are cliquey, such as when she makes it a point to not go with Bethenny on an excursion on the cast trip to Miami, but in practice they were basically attached at the hip. We see a small crack when Bethenny gets irritated at Carole for being late to dinner, but for the most part they seem to share an unbreakable bond. This takes us up to season 9 and chapter 4 of our saga, where they settle into an old married couple kind of dynamic. The season started shooting in the fall of 2016, and the Trump vs. Hillary election was on everybody's mind, most of all Carole Radziwill, which has totally exhausted Bethenny.
Carole is in the Hillary election hole. Vortex. She's like literally a shut-in cat lady who needs to see the light of day.
and has caused some tension with Ramona.
It's irrelevant. You don't know anything about the emails. You're just parroting headlines that you hear
So
in
are
the
you.
news.
Where did you get your information from?
Because I actually read the articles.
Bethenny is happily dating Dennis, and Carole is now shacking up with Adam, which has been causing Carole and Adam to bicker. Former it girl Tinsley Mortimer enters the scene, and Bethenny is cold to her right away. Carole's a little apprehensive behind her back, but nice to her face, so Tinsley warms up to her, but is put off by Bethenny's hot and cold demeanor. Tinsley's not quite able to penetrate the duo just yet. We see Bethenny and Carole together almost always. It's a given that they'll ride together everywhere, they get acupuncture together, and Carole always stays with Bethenny in the Hamptons. When Ramona asks Bethenny a personal question in front of everybody,
You're in the press now being naked and doing soft porn. Has anybody approached your daughter? Have you explained to her the situation? Or
At 6? Yeah, she got
no,
approached.
I'm asking.
Diane Sawyer came to her schoolyard and actually approached her.
the two begin feuding, but since Carole and Ramona are close, and honestly genuinely, we still see Carole turn up at Ramona's events, so she's not totally off on Bethenny Island, but B is often waiting in the car to whisk Carole away. They're each other's home base. Ramona does a bit of work to get in between them.
She's using you right now, just so you know.
She's not, okay, I'm good.
You know what she says? She says she doesn't like being with you because you're boring.
Well, I don't really believe you.
Well, I don't lie. So smoke that in your pipe.
But it's really Carole's newfound bond with Tinsley, which has been growing throughout this season, where we first see some cracks. It's not like they're over yet, but it seems like Bethenny isn't able to get as close with the other women as Carole is. Bethenny is the more out in front person in the duo, as while all this is going on, she's giving us iconic moment
Please don't let it be about Tom.
It's about Tom.
after iconic moment.
Never mentioned that, but you want to mention it? Now we'll mention it.
Mention it all. Mention it all, because you know.
But she's typically fighting with the other RHONY Titans, while Carole just gets in small spats and is mostly cool with everyone besides Lou. This takes us to Chapter 5, Something Simmering. So Season 10 opens up and we're seeing a whole new Carole. She's cut her hair, she's blonder than usual. She also seems to be putting a lot more care into her wardrobe. All this could be because she's newly single, though she hasn't totally cut ties with Adam.
Almost every day, every other day, we either have coffee or we have coffee.
And, most shocking of all, our skinny couch potato has decided to run the New York Marathon. Bethenny has also found a new passion in boots-on-the-ground charity work through her organization Be Strong. She's put her all into crisis relief, and on the heels of the disastrous Hurricane Maria, she's devoted herself to recovery in Puerto Rico. One of her first scenes in Season 10 is her accepting an award for her humanitarian work, and to everyone's surprise, she's invited only Ramona and Tinsley to join her at the ceremony. Odd, as her plus one had always been Carole for the past few years. We don't even see the two interact until the all-cast Halloween party, and even those interactions seem a bit off.
Are you smoking cigarettes now?
Well, Amelia chain smoked.
Oh, gee, I was like, you started the marathon and you're gonna smoke?
It seems like Carole's gone all in with Dorinda and Tinsley, arriving early to the party with the two of them. When Carole runs the marathon, only Tinsley comes to support her, which was clearly upsetting to Carole. All the ladies are miffed when they feel that Carole didn't adequately respond to their congratulatory text sufficiently.
I sent you this gushing email, like, so inspirational. You're so strong. I don't know how you did it. You got through it. And you sent me back a THX. Thanks.
I did?
Even Bethenny. But Carole defends herself, saying she did respond, and in her confessionals tells us that she didn't feel very supported in this amazing thing she'd done. It's clear things are off between B and C, but things get really weird when the ladies make their annual pilgrimage to the Hamptons and Carole stays at a hotel with Tinsley instead of Bethenny's like usual. Bethenny plays it off like she's okay with this because her daughter Bryn will be there, but it's clear she feels upset by this as we start seeing her talking about how Carole has to have a BFF at all times and she's been bumped in favor of Tinsley. It does seem like she's being a bit edged out when the three go out to lunch and Bethenny seems to hardly be addressed by Tinsley and Carole. We also see scenes of her lounging around and laughing with Tinsley the way she used to do with Bethenny. The crack between the two further erodes when Bethenny chooses to take Dorinda with her down to Puerto Rico, which is a disaster.
You think there's a constructive option to make it like ability to sustain itself?
And leaves Carole feeling a bit put out. B is telling us in confessionals that she chose Dorinda because Carole hasn't expressed any interest in Puerto Rico and is more focused on lashes and selfies with Tinsley to seem to care. To be fair, Carole is coming off very self-absorbed this season. It could be the choice of production and what they chose to show this year over others, but we are seeing Carole be a bit more of a diva.
One hard-boiled, and then the other two in my order. Can those be scrambled?
Of course, so 2 scrambled eggs, 1 hard-boiled egg.
And can you mix the scrambled part? Don't make it touch the hard-boiled egg.
And her whole personality and attitude feels different than it has in years prior. I feel like even if they had showed the best parts of her before and the worst parts of her this season, it's still quite a stark difference from the cool, breezy Carole we'd previously seen. She has almost a Heather Chandler HBIC quality to her when she'd always been a bit more of a Veronica Sawyer. My best guess is that it was the breakup. We often want to start fresh, give ourselves a little makeover when our lives change, especially if our pride is a little bit hurt. Training for and running the marathon may have also given her some confidence, and perhaps it just didn't translate well on screen. But I don't think Bethenny was crazy to think Carole was giving off a different scent this season. But anyways, so Carole is surprised she wasn't invited to Puerto Rico, not only because of her bestie status, but also because of her background at ABC News covering refugee camps in war-torn areas. She feels like Bethenny's experience witnessing the devastation of the island should bring them closer together, but something's just not clicking between the two of them. We also get a little backstory and find out that Bethenny had asked Adam to photograph another Be Strong disaster relief trip, but he'd asked for compensation and declined when she told him there wasn't any. Bethenny is majorly put off by this and had apparently called Carole blasting him, thinking she'd have a receptive audience as they'd broken up. It turns out Carole wasn't on board to bash him, and that's one of the suggested reasons why things have been tense. They're both making digs here and there and talking about how they've been growing apart, but the levee was about to break. Which takes us to Chapter 6, Nuclear Fallout. So the women make their annual trek to Bluestone Manor, aka the portal to Crazy Town. Dorinda's leaning into the vibes of the place and decides to host a murder mystery party, so the ladies are in costume.
Carole's playing the know-it-all politician in vintage lace with a deceased husband. So Carole's playing Carole.
Everyone has been noticing the tension between the two. Ramona had previously tried to stir something up when she told Carole Bethenny had called her a puppet, but Carole does the mature thing and asks Bethenny directly about it, squashing it.
Did I say that you jump on your other friend's arguments and kind of don't have your own identity and are kind of operated and moved by somebody else pulling the strings? Yes? Did I use the word puppet? No.
But I guess the Berkshires really does cast some type of spell, because when Dorinda asks if there's tension between the two, all hell breaks loose and the two finally inflict their wraths upon each other.
Every time we're together, you're kind of aggressive with me and kind of dismissive, and you're not
the case. You don't
honey,
see yourself accurately.
It is.
Don't call me honey, that's
Yes,
condescending.
The Adam compensation situation gets brought up, and Bethenny starts harping on small details.
I didn't call him.
You never told me you emailed
I
Adam.
never emailed Adam.
What are you talking about?
I didn't email Adam.
Okay, then what did you do? A smoke signals?
Yes,
what
I did
is it?
smoke
Okay,
signals,
okay,
yes.
whatever.
Things start to escalate, and Carole reveals that Bethenny had called the Countess a loser.
If I'm a loser, the rest of the world is.
This upsets Bethenny as it was private info. Bethenny tries to storm out multiple times and is getting flustered as she's used to taking the reins in verbal altercations, but Carole is able to hold her own, and B's accusations of Carole being crazy really don't land. She doesn't let Carole talk, and anytime she does, she yells that she's interrupting her. I think up until this point, Bethenny had been looking a little rosier in the confrontation, as we were seeing all the good she was doing with her charity work, and Carole was seeming so needlessly snobby, but I feel like in this Berkshires fight, Bethenny started to come off as irrational and like she was trying to gaslight Carole, who wasn't allowing her to do so. The two eventually find their way to a private conversation and hash things out together, then seemingly come to a better place, even giving each other a hug as they left, not together. I think if they'd gone on a trip, just the two of them at this point, things could have gotten to a better place, but they didn't, and when Bethenny throws her annual holiday party, Carole is feeling weird and is upset when she finds out afterwards that Bethenny had said she looked sad. I guess she didn't want to be painted as a victim upset about her breakup with Adam, but this was a bit strange to me. He was showing concern for her friend who's just gone through something that would make most people sad, but she interprets it as Bethenny gossiping about her and begins a sniper from the side attack against Bethenny, riling up Ramona and Dorinda against her. She points out that Bethenny wasn't super grateful for Dorinda tracking down a life-size nutcracker for her, and makes Ramona aware that Bethenny was making fun of her talking about her new business venture, Ageless by Ramona, saying that she was treating the party like an infomercial. Ramona rails into Bethenny about this.
You know how upset you got Dorinda for not acknowledging she got you that nutcracker for your daughter? And you don't support other women. You don't acknowledge anybody for anything they do. So how have you the audacity to talk to me like you're talking to me?
And the ladies take a break for the holidays. The next big event between Bethenny and Carole happens during this time, so we're left with a bit of a she said situation. But apparently Carole had gone on holiday during this time. Bethenny was texting her and Carole wasn't super receptive. B says she texted Carole a picture of them and said, "I miss you, you seem cold," to which Carole said, "Gee, Bethenny, that's a lot." This is understandably upsetting, but Carole fills in some of the gaps in Bethenny's story and tells us that she said this conversation would be better done in person, that she wanted to enjoy her vacation and would text when she was back in town to meet up. B didn't respect that and kept texting her about Ramona and felt that Bethenny had disrespected her boundary. The two meet up and have another conversation where they hash everything out. Carole says the conversation is like circling the drain and they seemingly come to a resolution and hug it out and seem to get back on better footing, but aren't besties again, evidenced by Carole not riding with Bethenny to a trip to the spa. Bea rides up with Sonja and the two of them have been getting closer, and Sonja does some work to drive tension between the two, if only to secure a spot as Bethenny's new right-hand man and get access to those coveted skinny girl jeans she loves so much.
Listen, I'm not thrilled that Carole and Bethenny are on the outs, but I am in with the skinny girl jeans. What can I say?
Tinsley proposes a trip to Cartagena, which you can get a full breakdown on in my Cast Trips Part 2 video. Right from the jump, Bethenny is an emotional mess. She has an allergic reaction to some fish and is complaining about the gorgeous house Tinsley set them up in. At dinner, Red Scarf Guy, a man who has stepped into the housewife hunter role Tom D'Agostino has recently vacated, gets brought up and tensions rise again. This man had been present on a speed dating event the women had attended and caused quite a stir. Ramona was into him, but he seemed more into Bethenny. Apparently, he was truly into Carole, and the two had gone on a 3-hour date shortly before the Colombia trip. Carole talks about how much she enjoyed the day, and Bethenny gets upset. She feels like Carole is being smug and says Red Scarf Guy is an operator, and Carole's really just a consolation prize. Bea was being pretty nasty to Carole about this, but I think she may have felt a bit rejected by Red Scarf Guy and passed over because she's clearly a lot more deeply triggered by this situation than if he was just some random dude. I think she was more into him than she was letting on, but whatever the reason is, Bethenny is miserable and wants to go back to the house she hates while the other ladies go out. The group divides, with each talking smack about the others. Luke convinces Sonja and Bethenny to go out to the bar where the others are, and Bea gets into it with Dorinda and Tinsley. Everyone besides Sonja is exhausted by Bethenny at this point, and she's feeling ganged up on. Everyone seems to kind of have the ick with her, and she's just giving off a very negative energy. She opens up a bit to Dorinda and talks about how her custody situation is weighing on her and that it's hard being on a trip that's more about Tinsley and Carole. She feels like an outsider. They hash it out once again at dinner that night. This whole thing is getting really exhausting, and it's more of the same. They've grown apart. Carole has a more whatever attitude about the whole thing, thinking that sometimes friendships ebb and flow, while Bethenny seems much more devastated. I noticed throughout all of their sit-downs, Bethenny always iterates how much she loves Carole and how much this sucks. Carole comes off as much less affected, but says she's just not as outwardly emotional as Bethenny. It's upsetting to her too, but she's just not much of a crier. She also feels confused because one minute she's being insulted, then the next minute Bea is telling her how much she loves her. They have more tension in the morning, then a funny moment where Carole sits down at the breakfast table while Bethenny, unaware of her presence, is ranting about her until Carole makes her presence known.
So, Bethenny, I'm here.
They hash things out again and find some sense of resolution again, and the ladies take a boat ride that goes horribly wrong. I thought it was worth noting that while Carole was getting sick to her stomach on the boat, Bethenny was there holding her hair back. Back in New York, they haven't really found their groove. Dorinda is the first to visit Bethenny's new apartment, an honor Carole would normally hold. Bea also doesn't go to a few group events, notably Carole's Cosmo party or Ramona's ageless skincare launch. The season ends with the first ever #Countess and Friends cabaret show.
Giovanni! Giovanni! Thank you, Giovanni!
And we see the two having a semi-normal conversation until Ramona decides to confront Bethenny over not supporting other women.
Wow.
And Carole hightails it out of there. They seem to be okay until it's reunion time and hell once again breaks loose. It's clear that watching the show back has just made everything worse. Carole has been going to town in her blogs and is very upset that Bethenny has attacked her career in her confessionals. They really spar, and it's clear that most of the other women are Team Carole, but Bethenny is a very clear ally in Housewives overlord Andy Cohen. It's clear right away he's annoyed with Carole, and this gets worse when she insults him.
You bash each other on the show.
We bash each other on the show.
Bash her on the show.
A fatal error in the world of Housewives and marks her exit from the show. Some people think she was fired for going after Andy, others think Bethenny gave an ultimatum, while others believe her time had just run its course. Which takes us to our final chapter, What Remains. It's a lot easier to hear Carole's side of things, as it's a hot topic in any podcast appearance she's made since exiting the show, while Bethenny stayed on for a year longer and is always causing so much chaos in the media and doesn't seem to give interviews quite as much, so it's harder to find her talking about the situation. Carole maintains that Bethenny had set the fallout up as a storyline, thinking it was a better arc to see two friends fall out rather than keep going on as they did, but Carole was astonished to see the magnitude of the blows Bea was throwing. She brings up her career a lot in her Bravo blogs this season, so it seems like the digs Bethenny made regarding that were landing below Carole's belt, and after that the situation was unsalvageable. There are a couple rumors floating around about the true nature of the fallout, but the one that seems to hold the most water is that during the summer before season 10 filmed, Carole spent most of her time with her friend Cassandra, who is grieving the loss of her husband, who was a bigwig at Paramount. Being a widow herself, Carole's focus was on tending to her friends, but apparently Bethenny was trying to meet this woman for the contact she had, as Bethenny was wanting to get her own show. It's true that Carole spent her summer with Cassandra, and we hear little allusions to this throughout season 10, but I don't know for a fact this went down. To me, this would be a big divider if I was Carole, as trying to network with a grieving woman is a bit much. Whatever the cause, it's something I still see people talking about, so I want to end discussing why I think that is. I think a lot of us see our own friendship breakups in that between Carole and Bethenny. Whether we felt like our friend had changed and gotten too cool for us, like perhaps Bethenny felt about Carole, or we felt our friendship was one-sided and gotten sick of it, like perhaps Carole felt about Bethenny. A lot of the time, there's no one thing that happens that causes a friendship breakup. It's just a buildup of a lot of little things until suddenly it's clear the energy has changed. And friendship faults can be devastating. It can totally reorder your social life, and you can lose other friends in its wake. And when it's a slow fade out, it can be hard to process what even happened. Even though they're on a TV show and they're very successful women, I still think that their friendship breakout is really relatable. So that's why I think the dissolution of Carole versus Bethenny still gets talked about. And it sucks because I really enjoyed their friendship. It seemed obvious that they'd be friends. There was a little bit of an opposites attract in that Carole was so laid back, whereas Bethenny was so tightly wound and emotional, but both of them were fun and smart. They were both successful in different ways and complemented each other well. They seemed to really connect, and especially for Bethenny, it was nice to see her have a real bond on the show. At the end of the day, we can only hope that somehow, some way, we will see the two of them rekindle things on RHONY Legacy. So let me know what you all thought of this fallout. I guess my loyalty lies slightly with Carole, but I do really like both of them, and ultimately, my loyalty lies on the side of friendship more than either individual. But if you've chosen a side, let me know who. And if there's any other fallouts you want me to cover, comment below. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel and give the video a thumbs up. And I just want to say thank you to all the support I've gotten so far in this YouTube journey I'm on. It's cool to know that other people care as much about the Real Housewives as I do. If you want to follow me on social media, my handles for Instagram and Twitter are @deeplysuperfish. I'll link them below. But I'll look forward to seeing you in the next video.